So I wanted to add a couple of notes on a trend of some candidates trying to please their interviewers and how this technique can actually backfire quite nasty, as you'll see next. And the first thing I'd like to cover here is in the questions for them. So, towards the end of your interview, they will ask you, hey, do you have any questions for me? And then, there is the approach that you would ask them questions they would enjoy answering, easy questions. For example, how long have you been with the company? Right? Now, in the case of an interviewer who doesn't have a ton of skin in the game, or who might be disengaged, who might not be particularly interested in building conversation with you, they might be fine. They might just answer, okay, I've been with the company for this much, and thank you very much, and let's move on. However, if there's someone who's really interested in screening you and who's probably a main stakeholder in the process as well, this could backfire. And the way it could backfire is they would simply give generic answers to your generic questions. So, for instance, how long have you been in the company? 5 years. Other questions: what do you enjoy the most about working here? The team. Other questions. Okay, and notice here how we cover 2 questions in a matter of seconds. And if we have 10, 15 minutes, you can imagine there can be a ton of such questions who might get asked. Now, what's the fix here? Well, the fix here, on one hand, it would be for you to really read your interviewer and see, based on the conversation you had during your interview, hey, what types of questions would make the most sense with this person, right? So if that interviewer is someone who basically take their notes and just move on, then it's no problem if you ask them easy questions. But if there's someone who's generally interested in understanding more about your qualities, then ideally you should prepare some more peculiar, more custom-made questions exactly for this specific interview. And needless to say, you must prepare a good number of these, right? So this was the first with questions for them. The second scenario, where being too nice can backfire and can actually disqualify from the job interview altogether, would be to not disagreeing with them about certain topics for the sake of social cohesion, for instance. So not showing backbone. Tell me about the time when you disagreed with your boss but still had to deliver on a project or initiative. I was managing an HR software and my partner had challenged me to stop all pending features to integrate with some job boards. This was going to introduce at least 3 months of delay in the development of pre-planned features. We had 6 people working on this full-time. However, the idea paid off big time and it became the most profitable feature in the software thanks to referral commissions. Okay, but in retrospect, do you think it was a really good idea to just stop all pending development and move on? This doesn't sound like a very popular request, not to mention code being lost to the sudden change in the direction and lack of documentation. Yeah, I think you're right, and in fact, I felt like the overall feeling in my team wasn't the best during that time. I actually did a little bit of these. Yes, we actually did just that. I mean, in project management, you cannot simply deallocate 6 people from the project today without prior doing some maintenance work. So basically, we took a couple of days to have the software ready to be further expanded in the future and ensure there would be proper version control in there. As soon as it was done, we went 100% into the new request. And the third scenario I want to talk about here would be the very common star format to answer interview questions. Now, the star format can be a very useful way to answer these interview questions and can very much add value to how you sell yourself during a job interview if you understand its benefits and its shortcomings, because there are some shortcomings to this star format. And the number one thing you should understand is the star format was invented by employers to screen candidates, right? So they offer you a template which you can fill in so you can communicate better in a way that they understand the idea that you want to communicate more easily, right? So nothing wrong with that. with the exception of the scenario where templating your answers will actually decline their value. And to explain here, for example, the classic example I always like, there are actually two ways I could explain this. First of all, if you have a motivational type of answer, people do motivational elevators pitches in general. Tell me about yourself. So if you have that emotional answer and you try to translate it in a star format, I guarantee you a template will never sound as motivational as it sounded in the first place, right? But you could argue, hey Dan, but the elevator pitch doesn't have to be in the star answer, in the star format, because it's not a behavior question. To which you're right, but still the example holds, right? Like templating a motivational answer crushes it entirely. But even further, when building a story bank, right, you'd want to brainstorm for a couple of stories and then to revise them, right? And what usually people do here is the first time they brainstorm for stories, they make a brain dump with information they can remember about that answer in the format that they feel it's the best, right? With as much information as they feel it's relevant. Now, what happens here is the first time that you revise that answer as part of that story bank, you try to template it in the star format, right? And there's nothing wrong with you trying to give that answer a structure so that the interviewer will understand you best. However, the problem is that immediately after you structure your story into the star format, the star answer, in my experience, will sound worse than the first time you say it, right? So the story will not be as good as the first version. So basically my pitch here is that you'll need a second round of revisions from that star format so you make it sound well. If you remember what I said, is that the star format is a template. So the star format was invented by the employers so they can screen you easier, right? And to streamline communication if you want. But there's a lot more, to a convincing answer than putting it in a template, right? So long story short, understand that templates are to your favor if you know how to use them, right? And trying to please the interviewer with the star format can actually backfire unless you really understand that you must add value to your answers using the star format, right? And in the same way with the metrics. It's very recommended, of course, to quantify information, and not many people actually do this often enough in their answers. However, overusing metrics will deteriorate the quality of your answers. If you use irrelevant metrics, for instance, you will fail to communicate your idea that you want to transmit more clearly, right? Because you overuse metrics, even if metrics are recommended by everyone, to use in these answers, right? So this was the third scenario. And now, just to close this with another scenario you'd want to be particularly aware of, even if you're a native English speaker, it is perfectly possible that at times you will not understand the question you're getting asked, or at least you won't understand it in full. Right? Could be some keywords, could be a bad connection, could be you didn't hear it, you didn't pay attention to it enough. And what happens here is that people, I wouldn't say because you want to please the interviewer, but because you are shy or you are too proud to admit that you don't understand something, you fail to ask them to clarify the question you're getting asked. Right? And because of that, many people, it's super common in job interviews that people fail to properly answer the question you're getting asked because they didn't understand the question in the first place, right? So I would very much encourage you to ask if you don't understand something here. And in the same category, if you're getting asked a difficult question for which you don't have an immediate answer, many people feel constrained to say something, during the heat of the moment, whereas, the expectation is you give the answer when you have the answer. So don't shy away from pausing a couple of seconds in case of behavior interview, or even minutes in the case of more technical types of interviews. So take your time to really understand and really think what would be the best answer for you. Don't just be reactive out of shyness that, hey, yes, you must do well with the interviewer and must say something, unless the conversation will sound boring and all that stuff, right? So again, so clarify those questions and don't be afraid to pause if that's the main thing. So just to recap here, questions for them. You must prepare, you must keep an eye on how the conversation evolves and prepare ideally custom-made questions for each of your interviewers and prepare enough of them. The second scenario, being too nice in the context of a backbone test. So backbone tests are quite common. And the third one would be the STAR format. To understand it's a template, and you need to go beyond that template to actually add value to your answers, right? And the other note was, if you don't understand the question, ask for clarifications. And if you're getting asked a hard question, take your time to answer it, right? So hopefully you found these scenarios useful, and thank you very much for watching.